Live from MMA Fighting Studios, this is Between the Links. And now, your host, Mike Heck.
The iconic voice of Esther Lynn welcomes you to a brand new edition of BTL. Thank you for joining us on another Thursday. Hope you're all doing spectacular. As always, tons to talk about. We got Jake Paul versus Mike Perry coming up this weekend. The UFC is back at the world's most famous Apex this weekend. UFC Denver happened last weekend. Dana White has said some things. Conor McGregor has said some things. A lot has been happening, so we're here for a special Q&A edition of the program, and who better to join us this week than a man who is actually in Tampa, Florida right now. He is the big booper himself, the hot take kid, and there he is dancing around with a pretty blurry camera right now, but he's here, and we're happy to have him. Jed Meshew, how are you, my friend?
Look, Tampa, I'm technically in Clearwater, not Tampa at the moment. And, you know, it's a little behind the times. It's quaint. It doesn't quite have the same high-speed internet as the wonderful Atlanta, Georgia does, but it has other things. It's got a pool. There's a pool right here, Mike. And it also has Jake Paul and Mike Perry. They are somewhere in this city with me. And on Saturday night, they're going to fist fight each other. And I'm going to be there to watch.
You're going?
Sure am.
Excellent.
It's going to be
terrific.
The wonderful E. Casey Leiden, also on location. I get to see the GOAT, Esther Lynn. Going to be a good time, you know, see what happens in the arena.
Well, that's what we like to see. I'm glad you are there. I'm glad you'll be boots on the ground, but I guess you're there for a reason. Would it be fair to assume that you were very excited for this fight? Because, I don't know, it seems that Jake Paul fights, people are kind of lukewarm. It builds up a little bit. Sometimes there's trash talk and weirdness. But I don't think this one really needs it. I think this one's just really fun. And I think I'm more excited for this Jake Paul fight than any other one that he's had. Is that the same for you?
Yeah. So this will now be my second Jake Paul event that I've attended. I was boots on the ground for the Ben Askren thing, which remains one of the most electric sporting events I've ever been to live. There was a concert in it. It was super weird. A whole lot of stuff happened, but it was fun. This is obviously much further in the Jake Paul experiment, right? Like we're much deeper in than kind of the groundbreaking that was. And it's the best fight he's had, you know. I had some interest in Tyron Woodley, certainly had some interest in Anderson Silva, didn't care at all about Nate Diaz or the boxing matches against real boxers or whatever. But this is the fight that makes total sense. Mike Perry is already doing his best to sell it. And yeah, like I'm pretty interested in it. And mostly my best friend lives here, so I was going to come down and visit him anyway. This kind of just worked out really nicely for timing. And I'm excited to see this. Frankly, I'm more excited about the co-main event because, you know, everyone does expect Amanda Serrano to win, but this will be my first real boxing match I've ever been to live. And so, like, counting that one as a totally real, no influence or nothing, like, that's just legitimate boxing. So I'm pretty pumped to see that in the event overall.
We are going to be covering it, obviously. You and Casey will be there. We'll be doing a watch party, myself and New York Rick. So if you haven't heard that news, it is happening, 10 p.m. Eastern. You can join us if you don't want to spend the money. We got you. And we're going to have a damn good time watching it. So let's take your questions. Of course, as you are all aware with most of this programming, the VIP line, you get to skip right over it with the super chat feature. So get right in there and let's answer as many questions as we can. Until we can answer no more. So let's go to Joseph Boza. If Valentina doesn't want to fight at the Sphere, is that the only way Rose gets a title shot, or is Mananfioro still in the catbird seat should something happen to Alexa or Valentina? Your thoughts on the flyweight division? Rose Namajunas gets a victory over Tracy Cortez. It was pretty much a lopsided win, but I don't think this was a performance that blew anybody away, Jed, and you probably avoided this card altogether, and if you did, I don't really blame you. It was what it was, but did Rose in that performance, is she the first phone call the UFC makes if Valentina can't go?
I didn't avoid it altogether. I was on vacation. We talked about this in BTL last week. I did exactly what I said. I pulled out the phone and I watched my boy John Silva. Just man, what an electric fist fight, and totally worth being at the party, hanging out with my friends, and just having my phone on the side. Didn't watch any other fight other than that one. I have since watched the main event just because it felt significant to do, and my takeaways are align largely with what you're saying, right, Mike? Like, that's not the performance that seals a title shot, except it's 2024 and the rules are different now, Mike. Like, we're just not living in the same world. I know you might want to cover your ears and just go blah, blah, blah. I know you don't want to hear this. We're living in a world where Arman Sarukian might get passed over for a title shot for Michael Chandler. Meritocracy just, it's not the name of the game. And so in any rational world, Manon Fior would have the catbird seat, front row tickets. She would be the first call if this Valentina thing keeps happening. It seems real weird. We can talk about that a little later. I'm not 100%. I would say it's more likely that it is Fiora, that she is the one who will get the first call, but it's not 100% that happens, because for as good as Manon has been, for the fact that she has a win over Rose Namajunas is still Rose Namajunas. She's got 2 wins in a row. She's a former champion and a big star, and that is just a much more sellable fight to the masses at large, and that's kind of the name of the game right now. So I don't think it will happen. I am not willing to say it definitely won't, and there's absolutely a possibility where if Valentina is out, somehow Rose gets a title fight coming off of that win over Tracy Cortez, which speaks a lot to where we are in the UFC this year.
I will say no, only because the biggest reason why is they don't need her, because this isn't going to be the main event. This isn't a fight night card. This is an ESPN Plus exclusive card like Noche UFC was last year. And there's another question about what we're calling this card coming up in a moment. But if Alexa was in the main event, Rose would probably be the first phone call. She probably doesn't deserve it over Manon Fiorot, who beat Rose and has looked great. And, a lot of us at MMA Fighting thought Erin Blanchfield was, I don't know if the uncrowned champion, but someone who was right next in line to fight for the belt, and she thumped her around. That fight was not competitive at all. So she absolutely deserves it. But I think Valentina's going to end up fighting because you don't want to piss the UFC off that much. You can certainly ask for something, but if you outright defy it and say no, they're not going to go back to you. They're going to skip over you like you don't exist at this point. UFC has done this for a long time. So if this is the main event, I think Rose might be, but it seems like all signs, at least as of right now, are pointing towards Sean O'Malley versus Merab Dvalishvili headlining this card. Alexa Grasso is obviously the co-main event for the theme, and that's great. And at that point, it doesn't really matter who she fights as long as she's on the card and fights somebody viable. I think it's going to be fine. I think Rose is going to have to fight somebody else. Just rebook the Macy Barber fight. I think that makes all the sense in the world. Go ahead and do that, and I think everyone's going to be happy. So there you have it. We do have a super chat from Chase. Let's skip over this poo-poo Apex card and get to UFC 304, which is happening next Saturday in Manchester. What are your favorite fights on 304? Also, is Patty the biggest star in the card, despite there being 2 champions on the lineup? So we'll start with you, Jed. What's your favorite 3 fights of UFC 304?
I had to pull up the card just to check it out. Let's go to the Pat. I'm going to do the Patty answer first, just because it's the shortest one. And the answer is yes. He is the biggest star on this card. Every time Paddy Pimblett has fought in England, both in and outside of the UFC, especially in the UFC, to steal his phrase, he has blown the roof off the gaff. When he hits the arena, yes, they are lit and live for Molly McCann, but the energy in the building when Paddy Pimblett is there, I mean, it is superstar stuff. And we all, God knows, we all love Tommy Aspinall. Leon Edwards has an immense amount of respect, but Paddy Pimblett is the star of this fight card. So that, as far as top 3 fights go, I'm going to say Muhammad Mokaev versus Manel Kape, even though that fight probably won't happen because it's Manel Kape. And so somehow that fight will he will miss weight. He will do something. Like, the UFC has been trying to spoon feed this man a title fight for like 18 full months, and he just keeps finding the line to not get there. So knock on wood, hopefully this is the time he gets over the hump, because I think Manel Kape versus Alejandro Pantoja, the rematch is an exceptional fight for a belt. That's a fight to help Pantoja really get over and kind of make a star. But, you know, Makayev's Makayev. So maybe Makayev just gets him. And if so, then Makayev gets the fight for the belt. No questions asked. Easy does it. Potentially our first champion born in the 2000s. So that fight has a lot of stakes, and I just really like the matchup. Should it happen? Obviously, huge caveat. And then the other ones, I love Arnold Allen, so I'll always say Arnold Allen versus Giga Chikadze. Just very interested in how that fight goes. Giga, people were really high on Giga, and then he kind of dropped off of the Cater thing, and it's sort of tough to know. And Arnold Allen, I thought for sure was going to fight for a belt. Had a couple of poorly timed losses, and now interested to see where he's at. And then I'm gonna defend it, Mike, because I've called this fight many things. I've called this fight leafy vegetables. It is that, but I love broccoli. Broccoli is delicious, Mike. It is always it's not what you want to be the main event of the dish. You know, I am not a vegan. I don't want cauliflower to be the centerpiece, but it's still exceptional nonetheless. Your vegetables are important. Fiber is great for you. And so Leon Edwards versus Bilal Muhammad, all other parts of this fight aside, it's two of the 15 best fighters in the world facing off for the highest stakes possible. It is a good fight. It might not blow your doors off. It might not be the most exciting fight of all time, but I am legitimately interested in this matchup and what happens. I think Leon has a very good chance to upset the apple cart and really just make everything weird. So I'll go with that as my third, despite the fact that my boy in the co-main event. I'll leave that to you, Mike. I don't want to take all the good ones from you. So you can have the co-main event. I'll have my leafy vegetables, and I will be right. It'll be like eating a bran muffin in the morning. I will be regular and steady and healthy, because we all need to be that.
You want to know? Number one for me is Paddy Pimblett versus Bobby Green. That's the number one fight for me. Yep. I'm very intrigued. There's a lot to this. Bobby Green's going to talk all the caca right back to Paddy Pimblett. Bobby Green's a wily veteran. Bobby Green is the toughest test Paddy Pimblett has faced thus far in his UFC career. Probably not the fight I would have booked. I would have looked at Moicano. I think that would have answered a lot more questions, but Bobby Green is a very tough test. It's a fight Paddy can win. If he gets this fight to the ground, he's got a very good chance of winning. If he doesn't, Bobby Green might thump him up something proper. So, but he also has 15 minutes. He's a very durable guy. Not to mention that Paddy Pimblett has revealed that this is the last fight on his current contract. So he's taking a little bit of a risk here, potentially going into free agency. So that just is the cherry on top of the sundae. I'm very, very much looking forward to this fight.
Also, Max Rabkin in the comments correctly points out there is no Bobby Green.
King Green, excuse me.
It's just one
King, don't call me Bobby Green. That's what I have to do to keep this going on. King, don't call me Bobby Green. That's number one.
Remember the name in the main event. We've got a lot of fun things going on with nicknames now.
I know. And then I'll probably go.
Is King a nickname?
Like, titles. Yeah, that was his nickname, Bobby King Green.
I know, but like, is it still? Is he now King Green? Like,
I hope so. I hope so.
That would be terrific. I don't know where we go when you do this. We're gonna find out. It's gonna be very exciting. It's a great pick.
Maybe Bobby will be the nickname.
Oh my God.
He'll still be King Bobby Green, but Bobby's the nickname. I love that. That's the fight. And then the two title fights are, I don't know, 2A and 2B. There's just so much on the line in both of those fights, especially for the co-main event. I think you can make a compelling case that fight has more on the line than the main event does. Because certainly Bilal Muhammad, it's do or die for him. If he doesn't win the belt next Saturday, he's never, ever, ever, ever getting another title shot. It's never going to happen. Leon, at least, they go to the UK a lot. If the welterweight title is to be defended, there's a very real chance because of what Leon has done to help sell out these arenas, they could just give him an immediate rematch, although I don't want to see that. I'd like to see Shavkat Rakhmonov get what he deserves, which is a warranted title shot.
I don't think rematch.
You don't think there will be?
I just don't think they want to do this fight twice. So
Yeah, maybe it's really good.
I
You
think
never
that
know.
he could get there if Shavkat beats Bilal and then they want to do it. I think he absolutely is not out of getting a title fight now that he is champion. But I've said this before. He's in exactly the spot Leon was. He's got one shot, and Leon
Yep.
almost burned his and then won it in the most incredible way possible. This is it. It's all or nothing for Bilal because he'll never get back. All his chips are on the table right now.
Yep. And on the co-main event, it's all or nothing for Curtis Blades. He'll never get another title shot. And for Tom Aspinall, everything that he's built, I'm not saying he's done. It's not do or die for Tom Aspinall. But if he ever wants to fight John Jones, and I don't think this fight's going to happen, but if he ever wants that fight to happen, if he ever wants to fight Alex Pereira, if he ever wants these big fights with these big stars, he has to win. He has to win, and he has to do it incredibly impressively. That's it. Like that, there's a lot at stake in both of these fights. They may not be, the biggest stars on the planet, but there's a lot on the line here. And I like stakes, both, from the food perspective and in the fight perspective. There's a lot to like there. So, I think it's a great main card overall. There's a lot to like about the main card. It's excellent.
It's a really good card. I can't like the co-main because I'm too invested. Because I have a ton of respect for Curtis Blades. I would love to see him ascend. It would be terrific, right? Like just what he's been through kind of for years. I thought he might really be like the uncrowned champ and sort of took some tough losses, etc. Like I got a ton of respect for Curtis Blades. I have never wanted a fighter I have liked. I've never wanted so much for a fighter I have liked to lose as I have. Because I don't want to deal with Twitter. I do not want to deal with John Jones if Curtis Blades beats Tom Aspinall. Like that's it. It is purely a self-preservation of the shit-eatingest things that will come out of that Twitter account and all the people who stand it. It will just be a horrible day. And so I need Tom to win this fight. And I'm too invested if he loses, which he certainly can, because Curtis is very good at fist fighting. It'll just be a hard day. So I can't enjoy that fight because I very clearly need a specific outcome in it.
That's fair. And as far as Patty being the biggest star on the card, you could certainly make that case. I think it's probably Leon Edwards. Just in that building, I think it's probably Leon. He's the man on the marquee. I think it's hard to argue that. But I think overall interest, what's going to make headlines during fight week, it's going to be mostly things that involve Paddy Pimblett. Like there's just no doubt about it. So that's what he does. And
particularly because, like you said, he's got King Green with him, Leon and Bilal have been talking a lot, but they're not going to generate the same pre-fight headlines that Paddy and King Green are going to.
No, not a chance. Thank you for the question. The other chase is the interim chase. I'm the undisputed champ of chase. Jokes aside, I'm very excited for Jake versus Perry, who wins and how. And then the other chaser responded, I'm treating the other chase how John treats Tom. Fair enough.
You're terrified
back to
that's a weird thing, but hey, credit to you. It's 2024. Let's be more honest about our feelings. We don't have to hide them anymore. So good on you, interim chase, for admitting your fears.
Well, who wins? Do you have a prediction? I mean, I think you're going to be on the preview show. I'm not 100% sure.
I'm going to be on the preview show.
Okay.
I'm going to be on the preview show.
Because of the super chat feature, you get to make your prediction now.
I'm leaning towards Mike Perry. I'm not 100% confident, and I'm leaving myself opportunities to kind of step back and forth. The biggest thing in favor of Jake Paul to me is that he accepted this fight, and Jake Paul has been very good about managing his career. It's you know that he can win this fight, because if he couldn't, he wouldn't take it. Like, that's just sort of how Jake has managed his career. Very smart prize fighting. I do think that this is easily the toughest test of his career. I would say even more difficult than Tommy Fury, just because Mike Perry is also young and physical, but he will not let Jake Paul have moments to breathe. He will not be like, okay, we can do this weird, bad jab boxing thing. He's just going to get in his face and rough him up if all else fails. I do think Jake has the tools to win, but I am very interested to see how he competes against a guy because no one has really pressed the issue that much on him. When Anderson did press the issue, Anderson was beating the hell out of him. No one has really gotten in his face consistently with volume, and I'm interested to see how he can navigate that, and I think that gives me a slight lean towards Mike Perry, though not a huge amount of confidence there.
So my prediction is going to be very similar to the Nate Diaz fight. It's going to look obviously aesthetically different than the Nate fight did, but I think it's going to go pretty similar in the aftermath of it, where Jake's going to win a decision, but Mike Perry's going to have a lot of moments, and by the time the fight is over, the momentum will have swung in his direction. So he may lose the fight on the cards, but he might win the fight in the court of public opinion. And I think that's sort of what Mike brings to the table. And he's going to thump up Jake in this fight. There's no doubt. He's going to hit Jake. Jake's going to hit him a bunch, and he's just going to kind of laugh in his face. And I'm very curious to see how Jake handles that. And I think Jake's aware of that, but I just think he's bigger. He's a little more, he's just a bigger guy. He's just got to be able to very smartly fight Mike. I think down the stretch, the last 3 rounds are going to be real fun, but there's a real chance the first 5 rounds are tough. Like real tough. Like Mike tries to get inside, Jake clinches him, just keeps jabbing to try to keep Perry away. And anytime Mike comes in close, he's just going to clinch him and try to get a separation. In a very real way, I could see that's how that fight can go down, at least early. But I think he might get a little tired, maybe a little annoyed that he can't put Mike away. And then Mike comes on strong, maybe wins 2 of the last 3 rounds. And looks real good. This is a win-win for Mike either way. As long as he doesn't get knocked out in the first round, like real bad, he's fine. Like he's in great position. So, yeah, Jake's going to set himself up nicely for Mike Tyson. And then Mike Perry's going to come out looking like a star. Everybody wins. It's going to be one of those types of situations. So I can't wait to watch it. It's going to be fun. Lazy Bet has donated $2 towards some SPF 50 for Jed. You can upgrade to copper tone, buddy.
I got a hat. I have a hat. I have a canopy. What more do I need?
Yeah, I could have used a hat. I wet my hair a lot before we start, or my head a lot. Left it out in the sun a little too long. We're in peeling mode right now, which is never fun.
Tough scenes.
Spencer, boys just moved from Cali to Barcelona, Spain, so we'll be relying on your expertise más than ever now. Ilya versus Max seems like the most obvious fight ever. Trouble making it or just not announced yet? I think it's more the latter.
I mean, certainly. It doesn't seem like there would be any issues making it, though. And this kind of circles back to the Noche thing. The UFC's just been doing this a lot. And Mike, maybe you have more insight here. I don't understand why like very obvious cards are being booked short-sighted of stuff. Like, hey, we know Noche's happening in September. In most years, we'd have Alexa Grasso versus whoever, and we'd just settle this. And it's still like dragging on. I mean, hell, the UFC 304, like everyone and their mother knew who was headlining this, and they still kind of delayed announcing it until whenever those fights officially got announced, like, 6-8 weeks ago. Like they aren't doing the, hey, this fight's happening in 3.5 months anymore. And I don't really know why when everyone kind of knows what the lay of the land is. Ilya is fighting Max. It's still a little odd because it seemed like they were just going to do the Volk rematch, but now all the momentum is firmly in the Max camp. That seems to be the fight that's happening. Just announce these things, man. Like, let people get hype early for stuff. But that doesn't seem to be the course of business for the UFC, at least not this year.
Yeah, I agree with that. It seems like, everything that I've heard is basically what Ariel has been talking about. October, there's going to be another pay-per-view. It's
100% what's happening.
Yeah,
but
that's
just
what's
like,
going to happen. We're going to get
everyone
Ilya
knows
Max Salt Lake City. Yeah. We don't even, they haven't even officially announced anything, which is pretty great. They haven't officially announced, I don't think, any of the fights on this card.
No, they haven't officially, like, everyone is aware of what's happening at Noche, and they just haven't announced it. Like, it's in 2 months. Come on, just do it. Like, what are we waiting for?
Yeah. The fight's going to happen. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be electric. Should
be a really, really good one.
Yeah, I can't wait for it. Cliff Booth, 54, retired vet, trucker. BTL gets you through those cold nights on the highway where it's just me and a good old bottle of whiskey. God bless you
Cliff,
all. Appreciate
Cliff,
that,
I
Cliff.
love your work with Rick Dalton. Don't drink and drive.
Yes, don't do that. I assume you're not doing that, which is good.
Also, don't watch BTL while you're driving. If you're listening to it in podcast form, okay. But
it's a
stay
great
focused
podcast
on the
network.
road.
It's a great podcast network. Someone had asked earlier, I can't find it. This is a great question too. Are we calling it UFC 306 or are we calling it Noche UFC? Now, according to the UFC in their announcement, both of those are incorrect because UFC 306 is wrong. Noche UFC is wrong. It's called Riyadh Season Noche UFC because of the sponsorship and the partnership there. So we're calling it UFC 306. That's what we're going to call it. At least as of right now. Could we revert to Noche UFC? Maybe, but as of right now, we're calling it UFC 306 because we're certainly not going to use Riyadh Season Noche UFC because that is the longest title for an event I've ever seen.
It is. I disagree with this editorial decision by us. I know that it is the decision we are going. I think pretty clearly it should be called Noche UFC, but it's whatever. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, we may get there. Jody, will Phoenix ever return to defend the real BTL championship? I hope so. I have to reach back out to her. She's been very busy lately. The last
also,
time
so we're clear, I'm not the BTL champion. I have never once claimed this is not an Aljamain Sterling situation. I have never once been like, I'm the champ. I'm here every day grinding, but I absolutely give her credit. This is not me doing any John Jones shenanigans with fake belts. She's the champ. That's how it is.
This is another fantastic question. How much do I need to super chat in to watch Jed belly flop into the pool?
I don't. You know,
what's the number? If the forces combine, $100? Is that enough?
I mean, so here's the, and I'm sorry to kind of break kayfabe here, Mike. Problem is, that money's not going to come to me. So I'm not really sure that there's a price because I'm not getting any of it.
But it's great. So it's great for the channel.
Sure, but I don't want to do that. So it's a bit of an issue in that regard. When I was a younger man, I used to like specialize in the old belly flop because why not? Just commit to it. Been a long time since I've wanted to willingly suffer for no reason. So
what about like a flip, a front flip? Can you do a front flip?
I haven't tried a front flip in a long time.
Oh, that could be something. Pull that off. Because one of two things is going to happen. You're either going to land it, maybe three things, or you're just going to look awkward as hell doing it, or the back slap, or the back slap, which would be tremendous content.
Both of those don't sound ideal right now to me.
If we get to $100, Jed will do a front flip. I think that's a fair trade-off, right? You don't have to do belly flop.
I'm not willing to commit to this. If I'm getting the $100, sure, because I'm not getting any of it. Like this is all you. This is all you and your Dunkin' Donuts coffee. I'm just out here.
All right. Hank is asking for a cannon. Hank's asking for a cannonball. That's easy.
Cannonballs are easy. Cannonballs are easy. I don't have great shorts for this, but we could maybe make a cannonball happen. Also have to remember how to open that gate, but we've got some time there. Drop. Chase, I love and respect you. I don't have a Zelle. I guess I actually do. I bank with the thing that has it. I have to figure it out. But then that also opens another can of worms that I don't really want to get into. I'm not confident how much our superiors would enjoy if I was just like, here's my Venmo.
It might not be the smartest thing either.
I don't think Mike, it would be.
I feel like we already kind of saw this one goes, talking about the main event next Saturday. Bilal was kind of getting his ass handed to him before the eye poke. So,
I mean, so there's absolutely a world where that's true. I saw this comment when it came up, and I'm glad you pulled it up. There's a world where that's true. It's also one, that fight was many, many years ago at this point in time. Both of them are just fundamentally different fighters since then. I would say Bilal has improved pretty dramatically since then. And two, it was one round. Like, yeah, he was losing that round. Like, he lost that round for sure. It is not like, oh, for 20 minutes he was getting whooped on. And also, by the way, not saying this would happen. Leon got whooped on by Kamaru for 20 minutes, then head kicked him, and then the rematch just kind of had his way. Like, fights are just very different every time out, particularly with as much time has been between them. And I think Leon should be the favorite. I just think Bilal does have a real shot at pulling this thing off because Leon is so slow. Like, he does, it's so not slow, so low output. Like, he is really, really pared his game down to not a lot. The Bilal can maybe just win rounds by simply doing stuff.
It's going to be interesting the longer that fight goes, for sure. A bunch of people asking, where's No Bets Bar, Jed? I don't even know the answer to this question.
There was going to be a No Bets Barred, and then it didn't happen because I failed you all. And that's stand up. Connor told me last week that he couldn't do it this week, and I totally forgot because I went on vacation. And when I got back, I was like, poop. I didn't make arrangements for this. So there are none. Connor gave out his bets on the MMA Hour yesterday. You can also go to his Twitter feed and check them out. He's pretty light, just 4 of them. I have no action down on this card at this point in time. I may lay 1 or 2 because I know we're not going to get a lot of questions. It's not the worst, Apex card I've ever seen. There's some stuff here that's worthwhile. So, but we'll be back next week for 304, and we'll do something big to make up for being gone.
Ray is predicting Jake by KO minus 115.
Overthinking
it.
I'll be pretty surprised if that happens.
I would agree.
Again, won't be surprised if he wins the fight. Like, in no way surprised if he wins the fight. Let me pull up old Mike Perry. Let me make sure I'm not about to totally speak out of my ass. So Mike Perry did get knocked out in his lone boxing match in the 4th round by the esteemed Kenneth McNeil. And he's been
fight he
knocked
took
out
on like
once
2 days notice, by the way.
Yeah, and he's been knocked out once in his MMA career when he got head kicked by Jeff Neal. Dude shoe leather tough, and they're in 10-ounce, 12-ounce gloves. Jake Paul hits very hard. I'm not here to say he doesn't. I'll be pretty if he knocks out Mike Perry, I'll be very impressed.
I agree. I don't see him knocking Mike out. Could he drop him? Perhaps, but he didn't knock out Nate Diaz. Yeah, he dropped Nate, but couldn't get him out of there. Yeah. This could be very similar. If the Chicago parlay cashes and Blades and Muhammad both win, does the UFC return to he did correct Chi-Town in 2025?
No chance. No chance.
If they
should, but I mean, the UFC never went to Cleveland they went to Cleveland once when Stipe was champion for like 3 years or whatever. They're bad about this, about doing that sort of thing in general, unless it's London, unless it's England of the country. And because they're just going to go whoever's going to pay them. Where are the places that are going to pay them to go? Chicago has plenty of other things. They don't have to pay to draw interest. And also, so we're super clear, this isn't me saying this is me just being honest. If both Bilal and Curtis wins, I think the UFC might cry. Like, the organization might just come together and have an all hands crying meeting where they're just very sad that these are the champions they have, because they super don't want that to be the outcome, guys.
That's true. This person is just spamming away.
It'd be dope if they did the bear. But like, this is the UFC doesn't care anymore promotionally, and that's fine. Like, they don't have to, but like they don't take layups anymore because they don't have to. It is just who's going to pay us money to go. That's where we'll go. Salt Lake City is going to pay us every year. We'll go every year because they're going to pay us a whole bunch of money to do it. Like, in any normal world, UFC 305 would be taking place in Miami. It's not, because they don't care anymore. Like, they aren't going to take those layups.
Yeah, because Perth is paying him a whole bunch of money, and that's where it's happening.
Yeah.
It amazes me how much Mike and my chiropractor look alike. The question is, have you ever seen us in the same room together? Double agent, bro. No, I didn't see that comment coming today. Where are we? Holy shit, a lot of questions.
Got a twin out there, Mike.
Questions here. Maybe. Was Nate scammed to fight Jorge Masvidal? Thoughts on the lawsuit Nate filed? I think this is an appropriate question for you, Jed. Your thoughts on this whole situation?
Did he file a lawsuit? Unknown at this point. Nate just denying that he's suing anybody was real weird.
No,
I don't.
But you see how he said it though?
No,
the way he said it actually. Yeah, the way he actually tweeted it out. Let me just pull up the actual tweet. The way he actually like laid it out from like an English language perspective. He actually was basically saying I ain't suing nobody, which basically says like I am suing somebody, but in a different roundabout way, is it not?
Yes, if he's parsing that out, I'm not certain that he's making that distinction. There's still a lot to kind of unpack here as it.
And there's also a physical lawsuit actually filed that we have the paperwork.
Yeah, that's the part that's weird to me is like you can't just say you're not doing it when it's there. This is why athletic commissions exist functionally, and seems super shady. Not making any determinations, barring more evidence coming out. But I am deeply unsurprised, and I am operating from the assumption that Nate Diaz is all the way correct, and that this semi-unheard of organization is incorrect. Both because they've also kind of corroborated it with being like some of their statements and stuff. So this, kids, is why you get paid up front, or you make sure that money is in escrow somewhere, because otherwise then you have to go to the courts, and like hopefully Nate Diaz gets everything he is owed. That is, at this point, I would say seems unlikely, but I hope the best for him because he goddamn deserves it.
Completely agree. And I have no idea what's going on the Masvidal side. I have reached out to his team a couple of times and have heard nothing back. So perhaps they may be dealing with something similar and they can't comment on it, but I don't know. This is the issue. It's bad with
fake paychecks. Like,
yes,
the reason athletic commissions exist is to ensure payment for fighters. And so even in a place like California, who does a here's disclosed pay, the undisclosed pay part is an issue, because if Nate just got $9 million up front or whatever that number is, that money is in escrow, and the CSAC is like, yep, money's here. Here it is, distributed to Nathan Diaz afterwards for services rendered. Instead, $500K was in escrow, and then, at least apparently, Nate returned that per the wishes of them to get paid his X amount of dollars thing. Like, there's a very real world where the outcome here is that Nate makes $500,000 and then some other money, but doesn't get the full bend of what he is owed. And so, again, kids, make sure you get paid what you're worth. Make sure that money is in escrow.
Yeah, apparently the gate was like 1.5 or something like that, something to that effect. Kevin Eiley put it out there. And based on reports that we have seen, Dave Meltzer specifically, who used to be with us part-time, is sort of the ratings guru when it comes to combat sports and pro wrestling and stuff, saying this did awful on pay-per-view, saying that is for the non-pro wrestling fans out there, he's saying these are TNA numbers, and TNA is a wrestling promotion that has just gone to caca. It's trying to get its way back, but their pay-per-views do at best like 50,000, and some have done as low as like 5,000. So he's saying this is TNA numbers. Like that, you think that's too many?
Or I think that would be far too many. If this sold 5 figures, I'll be a little bit impressed. I don't know a single person who was buying this. I know people who were interested, certainly, and obviously a ton of people came to MMAfighting.com, great website. At this price point, I just don't. This reeks to me of, hey, remember when Bellator did a pay-per-view and that didn't work out? Like this should be PFL pay-per-view numbers, like 4 pay-per-views sold. So which is again why, if Nate's getting a cut of the door, which I assume that's negotiated, look, that's not something he can kind of get set aside ahead of time. That's an after the fact thing. Cut of the pay-per-views, I just don't think anyone should have expected there to be a big cut of the pay-per-view. So, however this is structured, I don't think Nate and his team kind of did this optimally, and that's why they're now going to have to go through this. And the legal process sucks. So if you can ever avoid it, it's usually better.
Spencer, Izzy versus DDP press conference and stare down fired me up. If Izzy wins and defends against Sean, does Pereira Izzy 3 need to happen before Poatan moves up?
So on the last part, I don't know. If Izzy beats DDP and then rematches Sean Strickland and does defeat him, at that point, the only fight that will really make sense for Izzy, unless Hamzat gets his shit together and gets a win or whatever, like at that point, it really is just, okay, we're doing Izzy Poatan 3, all steam ahead. I'm not sure about how the timeline works because God knows I don't want Alex Pereira to move up to heavyweight at this moment in time. But the rest of the universe seems to really be on the F light heavyweight, man. Go just fight anybody at heavyweight. Doesn't matter. Fight Alex, fight whoever, just to fight a heavyweight. So I'm not sure that that's restrictive. If he goes up and fights Tom Aspinall, good, he gets the John Jones fight. You can do that afterwards. Like the Izzy Pereira, it's a back pocket fight. You can pull that out at any point in time, and it will never be stale, never be past its expiration date. So a little bit of a quibble with the timeline, but yes, functionally, this is absolutely correct.
It's possible. That was a good little presser. DDP got Izzy a little bit, which I loved.
I've been telling y'all for almost 2 goddamn years. This is the fight. It's the only fight I've wanted for like 2 years. Oh, it's gonna be so good. It's a good thing
BK,
you took up golf. Old retired ass.
It's your retirement sport. BK, if Mike Perry messes up Jake Paul this weekend, does it hurt the Paul Tyson Netflix thingy? That is a big selling point based on the promotion from Jake Paul in particular. He was on Pat McAfee and said that if he loses, the Mike Tyson fight's not happening. I don't think you agree with this.
I disagree with it. I really hope it doesn't. I really, really, truly do not want Mike Tyson and Jake Paul to fight each other. If you gave me the option of getting that outcome to not happen or getting DDP Izzy, I think I'd even go like, just don't have that happen. Because 60-year-old dudes shouldn't be fist fighting 27-year-old men. It's just not a thing that should happen. And there are a lot of fraught potential problems that could occur there that would make us all feel real, real, real bad. That being said, I don't think losing to Mike Perry takes that off the table, despite what has been said. I, in fact, think it might even make it more like if he goes out there and knocks out Mike Perry, I think the momentum for Mike Tyson is going to fall. Not with the broader casual fans who don't know anything, but like people who at least know who Mike Perry are, be like, dude, if he knocked out Mike Perry, he's going to kill that old man. We should not do this for health and safety concerns. Whereas if he goes out there and loses, okay, suddenly, like, even me, who still super doesn't want this fight to happen, has to be like, okay, this fight is more competitive. I still don't think it should happen. Still don't think it is competitive. But if I watch Jake Paul get knocked out by Mike Perry, Mike Tyson can land one on him. There's always a chance. So I don't think this will prevent it from occurring if should that come to pass.
Completely agree. I think it's honestly more interesting. Like it's just a more interesting fight. It gives Mike more of a chance in the eyes of people. And plus, they're not going to ruin this. This is going to be the most watched fight of all time. And it's on Netflix. There's just too much at stake here to not do it.
The Netflix is the key part there because this is pretty cool. To me, this entire thing has read very clearly of Netflix is getting into live sports. Netflix is going to make a bid for the UFC live product. And this is to some extent a dry or a trial run of combat sports. But they also want to do it in the biggest, grandest way possible. And this fight will be the most viewed fist fight of this century on Netflix. And there's not another replacement that kind of fits that bill. Like what else could Netflix offer up to be like, hey, this will get broad casual appeal, the likes of which we are after. This is kind of a perfect matchup for that. And so the check isn't going to go down from Netflix for this. And if the money's right, if it makes dollars, it makes sense. Like they're still going to do this thing.
Yep, I agree. Senor Pepe asks how much for a solo no bets bard.
I might do it because I was talking to Shaheen last night about it. It might just be like 20 minutes of, hey, here are the 4 bets, and I'll recap what Conor did. So I'll see if I can get that done before tomorrow for you.
There you go. Speaking of Conor, another Conor. Do you see the UFC broadening their horizons in 2025, like going to Spain and new arenas, or playing it safe like this year especially?
What do you think, Mike? I think I have a thought, but I want to hear your side of this.
I think it's more column B than column A, because why would they broaden their horizons when they can get paid tens of millions of dollars to go to Salt Lake City or Houston or Perth or whoever is willing to pay them? Having said that, if Ilia Topuria fights Max Holloway in October and beats the soul out of that man, he is on a rocket ship. I mean, I think he's already kind of there now. He's kind of gone back to earth a little bit because of how he sort of handled being champion. It's sort of rubbed people the wrong way. So I haven't necessarily really agreed with how he's handled at least his social media game, especially on Twitter since winning the belt. But if he goes out there and thumps up Max Holloway, if he becomes the guy that finishes Max Holloway, I mean, you give this man whatever he wants. If he wants to go to Spain, we saw the type of crowd that influencer boxing brought into Spain. They filled a whole friggin' soccer stadium with it. What do you think the UFC is going to do?
They've done that 2 or 3 times this year.
Yeah. What do you think the UFC is going to do? And the amount that they could charge for tickets, these people are going to pay it. They're just going to. So I think a lot is going to depend on who's champion. I think Ilia Topuria is a big part of them going to Spain, but I think for the most part, might see some places they haven't been in a while just because why not? But I think for the most part, they're going to go where the money is, and we're going to see them going to a lot of places that they typically go to. We know MSG is a done deal. They're not going there. They're going to go to Abu Dhabi at least once. They're definitely going to Saudi Arabia next year. They're going where the money is. And could Spain happen? Sure, but Ilia winning is going to be a big part of that.
If I had to guess, and I agree mostly with what you said there, I'll just add on a little bit because I do think the primary driver is who's going to pay them. I think it's a non-zero chance if Ilia beats Max that they go there to a pay-per-view with Ilia versus Volk 2. I think that could happen. I think the more likely outcome, and this is just going to be to the UFC's sort of operating procedure broadly, is that the pay-per-views are going to go to the same 7 locations. Vegas is going to get a couple, certainly International Fight Week, and like 1 or 2 more thrown in there. MSG gets one. Perth or somewhere in Australia will get one.
They're going to Anaheim.
London. They'll go to London. They'll go to Anaheim. They'll go to Salt Lake City. It's going to be those unless someone comes and says, here's a $20 million site fee. Saudi wants one. Abu Dhabi gets one. Like those same locations will just be the sort of, like, think of it like an F1 schedule, right? Like it goes to the same tracks every year and it might add a new track because they're expanding, but mostly it's just going to be the same spots every year. Fight nights is where they will open it up. And so if Dricus du Plessis beats Israel Adesanya, I think there's actually a decent likelihood that the UFC does do like a fight night card in Africa, maybe in South Africa, where they don't have to try and do a pay-per-view and navigate the difference in the time zone versus their primary pay-per-view audience, but they can get Dricus there. They can, say, hey, look, we did our first event in South Africa and it sold $80 billion worth of tickets. And they can get, some EFC guys on and do that. I think that's there. I think Spain is very likely next year if Ilia wins. But again, maybe just not as a pay-per-view. Maybe that first they want to go do something a little smaller, do a fight night, and then, okay, how does the fight night go? All right, now we'll get in there. Because, when they break new ground, it is not with a pay-per-view. It's, hey, we went to Saudi and did a fight night card, and it was a big fight night card. Now, next time we kind of know what to expect. Maybe we can do a pay-per-view here, but they want to dip their toe in before diving in. So I think Spain is pretty likely next year, but with something smaller than people are imagining, not with Ilya at the head of the card.
Interesting. I mean, they missed out on Africa. PFL is going to go there before them, but
yeah, they 100% should do this. By the way, like they absolutely should, but
they
that's
don't
just
need to.
not. That's not what they're going to do.
Yeah, they don't need to do it.
The fact
they
that we never got
it,
UFC Africa when they had 3 African champions is borderline criminal. Like it's actually insane that they couldn't spin something up there. But these are not the primary drivers for their business, and so I think just kind of look at everything through that lens.
So I saw a few of these, and I think I think this needs to be cleared up. How is that Nate didn't get paid when the UFC backed this? So when you say backed this, I don't think you necessarily understand. Like the UFC had no financial interest in this card at all. Like they didn't put up their money to help promote it. Yeah, they said, and Nate can do whatever the hell he wants. So Nate didn't need the UFC's blessing to do anything. Masvidal does, because he did retire, but he is still under UFC contract. So in order for Masvidal to compete anywhere, he would need the blessing from the UFC. So that's where that comes from. This fight doesn't happen without the UFC, only because of Masvidal needing permission to compete. The UFC had no interest in this fight from a financial perspective. I'm sure they were watching just to see how they performed, but
and
that's it.
It was available on Fight Pass. So, somebody, they gave it the blessing. They said, you can marry my daughter, but I'm not financing this wedding. And so,
they gave them the platform, but just the Fight Pass platform is an option to purchase it. But it's like the UFC was like, here's $10 million. Please allow your pay-per-view to come on our network.
And I guarantee you that when the UFC did do that platform deal, they got whatever money they owed from it. However many pay-per-views they sold on the Fight Pass platform, they got their, $1 cut from each of those, because they're very good at this. They know how to keep themselves protected.
For sure. Jednat and Mike Patty has said on numerous occasions he would love to do a season of TUF with Moicano. Would you like to see that? I answer this on Heck of a Morning.
Actually, kind of, yeah.
TUF is just a dead product, man. Conor freaking McGregor was on it last year and nobody watched it. You think these two guys are going to get people to watch? Maybe a couple, but then they're going to realize, oh, this is the same freaking show we've been doing for 20 years. Like, this is it. This is silly.
It's very silly. There are a number of ways to save TUF. They're never going to do them because they're all silly, but they'd be fun. I will say this is the TUF casting I enjoy. Conor Chandler, I thought, was like literally perfect because it's two dudes who aren't holding up anything. Like it's Conor's out for the recovery. Chandler, he's not going to fight till Conor comes back. So that's not putting a delay on something. The fact that Alexa Grasso did not fight at all this year and is now going to do a Noche is insane because she's actually captaining a weight class that has viable, fun, interesting contenders. And they were like, immediately, she's not going to fight till September. Let's put her in TUF. Like, we should have had Alexa Grasso, Valentina Shevchenko already. And UFC Noche, particularly if they're going to be the co-main, they're not even going to be the main, should be, if Grasso is still champion, Grasso versus Manon or, Rose, whatever. Like, we should just be getting the one weight class, the one female weight class with like genuine momentum. Just got shut down this year because they're like, hey, Alexa's going to sit on the sideline for 12 months or however long it's been. So I hate it when they do that. But something like this, Patty and Moicano, they're not slowing up the works. They're not grinding the gears to a halt. So that would be absolutely fine. And, if people are into it, cool. I haven't watched TUF since the straw weight, TUF 20, the straw weights. The last season I watched, and it was the first one I watched in forever, was when it was, hey, we're introducing the straw weight division. Okay, I'll watch that because they're real fighters who are like meaningful and good.
Yeah, the show's terrible. It's awful. It's awful.
I would watch a TUF where they're introducing the atomweight division. Because, like the winner of this will be crowned champion. These are now meaningful fights. Beyond that, I'm not going to watch a TUF. If you want to, have at it. But unless they do something dramatic to the format or it is something super significant like crowning a champion, then I don't care.
Jed, you're not betting the Mo Usman over 1.5? Free money.
Yeah, but the price last I checked was
It's probably up there,
as one can
but
imagine.
over 2.5 is minus 210.
Yeah, so it was like there. I agree. Look, Mo Usman has been a card-carrying member of a heavyweight over nation, but sometimes you got to draw a line. I'm trying to pull up my DraftKings, but it's taking a moment. So I don't know what the over 1.5 is, but great parlay piece. If you want a little non-violent parlay, that is where I would start building.
It's not up. Alternate lines are not up for that fight just yet.
Yeah.
Or maybe so many people took the over 1.5. They're like, we're pulling this. This is ridiculous. We can't take it anymore. I don't think that's
unlikely,
true.
but possible. I don't think it is either.
We'll take a few more. We do have the Perry Paul presser coming up at the top of the hour, so we want to make sure we have enough time to get you all ready for that. Lazybet always asks these crazy ass questions, and I dig it. Someone travels back to the 90s and disrupts the timeline. The unified rules of MMA never occur, and the sport stays NHB. Which modern fighter is the most successful under the old no rules banner?
So this isn't the answer you want, and I'll give you the answer you want. If the rules stay in HB, then MMA never gets big. There's just absolutely no way in hell that the rules that they operated with at like UFC 3 are what broadly acceptable for the masses. Like it's just not a chance in hell. That being said, one, there always were some rules. Like even at UFC 1, like you couldn't bite. So it was never no rules. It was just a marketing gimmick. But pretty clearly, like to my mind, at least, the biggest advantages that would be gleaned from those, and certainly how the sport has transitioned, is fence grabbing was legal. And while fence grabbing is a terrifically useful tool to prevent yourself from getting taken down, buddy, go watch some of the fights where you can use fence grabbing offensively. Because, for instance, let's say you get someone down and suddenly you have a leverage point of the fence to keep them down, and you can ram your head as a headbutting battering ram into their face using the leverage of the cage, and they can't go anywhere. Like, I think Tank Abbott did that once, though maybe he actually just used it as a leverage point and then pounded right hands. But I want to say that he used it for headbutts. Headbutts and tank and fence grabs offensively. Mark Kerr's entire game was functionally taking people down and headbutting them. Those would be massive advantages. So think of your best grapplers. They get way better if they're allowed to headbutt on the floor and use the cage proactively. So who does that mean right now? Then trying to think of who that translate to in the current MMA landscape.
Would Alexander Romanov become heavyweight champion? I feel like he'd be great with
he'd be way better. He'd be way better. Curtis Blades probably would be heavyweight champion at that point in time.
Yeah, he'd be a good one.
Probably there's that. It's just like those are just wildly significant changes that they don't allow you to do. Headbutts on the ground are huge. Knees to the head of grounded opponents would also be massive.
You should just do that anyways.
Anti-wrestlers. But yes, that should be a rule. I get why headbutts aren't allowed. I do think standing headbutts should be legal, like Lethway rules, but I know this is not going to happen. But yeah, I think there would be even as MMA is currently, the metagame is shifting away from grapplers more and more. I do think if you brought those rules back, it would be harder to shift away from grappling to the extent that it has.
Now for some really exciting stuff. Marcin Tybura, Sergey Spivak to headline at the world's most famous Apex.
Pretty bad.
That's a tough one. That's a tough one.
Pretty bad.
I
can't remember if because Cliff Booth just put this in there. I can't remember if eye pokes were actually legal in like the first 5 or whatever, or if that was one of those things that they like lied about. Because like biting was never really legal. Groin shots were legal, which is terrific for like a very small period. if eye pokes weren't illegal, and they might not have been, because like particularly in karate, that's like a thing. I just can't remember if that was fair. If eye pokes were, then John Jones is 100% the correct answer. His like easily his best weapon is suddenly allowed. He'd be terrific.
That's another question. We kind of ripped TUF a little bit. How do you feel about the Contender Series? Do you like that show? This one just makes me sad,
feelings.
man. It makes me so sad because when the UFC introduced this concept, I actually thought it was the most brilliant thing they had done in years. I absolutely loved the first 2 seasons of the Contender Series. I would not miss it. I would schedule my week around watching watching the Contender Series. It was the best dudes, the best women fighters around the world. Most of us heard of all of them, and they would battle it out in like dream regional matchups. Like we got Matt Bissett and Kurt Holloway headlining the first Contender Series card. And to me, I was like, holy shit, this is a fight. This is a great fight. Like both these guys probably deserve to be in the UFC after what they had been doing on the regional scene. And it was just a great series those first 2 seasons because winning wasn't enough. You could go out there and flatline a dude in 2.5 minutes, but that doesn't necessarily guarantee you a contract. Like you had to be the elite of the elite. And now we understand what the show has become now. All you have to do is get on and win. And you know what? You don't even have to win now to get a freaking contract. All you have to do is just have like a decently fun fight or compete in a non-fun fight where Dana thought you won when you were on the wrong end of a bad decision. Then you just get a contract. And if you appear on the show more than once and you win more than once, no matter what the performances are, you get a contract. And it is because of this schedule, the Contender Series is just a way for them to save a whole bunch of money and fill up 43 fight cards a year. Because you got to fill the Apex cards. You have to fill the prelims of pay-per-views. You have to fill the prelims of the Roadshow Fight Night cards. And that essentially is what this show has become. Not to mention the fighters who lose, if they're in Vegas, they're able to make weight for a short notice opportunity. These are the first fighters that are going to get called because they already have the medicals and everything they need on these fighters anyways. They have everything they need to do ready to go. So it is a cost-saving measure now as opposed to bringing in the best fighters to compete for their organization. And once in a while, we get Bo Nickel to drive ratings. They made Ikram Aliskerov fight on the Contender Series, which is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen because that dude was probably one of the 10 best middleweights in the world even before appearing on that show. So the show has lost its luster. It's broken my heart that it's become what it's become. We know what it is now. And it is no longer must-watch viewing for me unless I have to watch it. And it sucks that I have to say that because I never thought within the first 2 seasons that I would ever utter those words in consecutive order like that. But this is what the show has become, and it sucks ass.
I agree with a lot of what you said. It's fine. There are gems, and that is the part of it that's good. I do wish they would just be more discerning. I wish being a Contender Series signee meant something, because that would just be cool. Like when they have their board of, hey, here's a guy from TUF, here's a contender. They're all just CS guys now. It would be cooler if that meant like, oh, he's awesome, because there's still top talent that comes through there. Jean Silva came through there. Peyton Talbot came through there. Like these are people who are going to be top 10, top 15 fighters for years to come. And they were noticeable then. I wrote a column about like, hey, here are the best prospects off it. And it ended up being like, 60 people or whatever. Like I think there were like 50 signees from this most recent season of it, either because they won or they got signed short notice, et cetera, et cetera. They lost competitively, like you said. But in that, it was pretty easy. Like, hey, here are the best ones. Like, these are the people that should be getting contracts. They're very evident. If you just watch fighting enough, you can see the hallmarks of somebody being good here. But then there's also like, yeah, Shamil Gaziev got a contract because he won, and then he even got to main event something because it's heavyweight. And it's just like, it'd be cooler. But at the same time, it's such a low barrier to entry that I'm okay with it. Just because, like, it doesn't cost you anything. It's Tuesday. It's Tuesday night when nothing else is going on. It's 5 fights, which is a tidy number. You get in, you get out. You got something. There's a way to watch Tuesday, and maybe every once in a while you will get a Jean Silva, you will get a Peyton Talbot, and then that's pretty electric. My bigger issue is the issue I had with it from day one, and which you kind of alluded to. It's a scab workforce, for lack of a better term. Like this is labor. Like this is cost controlled labor. And so there's a reason that like mid-level UFC fighters are leaving in larger swaths, because the UFC is not willing to sign somebody. Like the fact that Rene de Ritter signed with UAE Warriors, like the former double champ for ONE FC, one of the 15 best middleweights in the world by our rankings and by like most people with eyeballs, went to UAE Warriors. Like he's a free agent, went to UAE Warriors. Maybe he does end up coming to UFC, but the UFC is just not going to pay him a market rate. Like, yeah, come fight on Contender Series and start your ass at 10-10 because you're replaceable labor. And so I really dislike that portion of it. But is what it is. So,
yeah,
I'll do a write-up on this upcoming season again.
Yeah, Roberto Soldic got offered from the UFC, turned it down, went to ONE. And the fact that he didn't go to KSW tells you that ONE paid him a lot of money, like a floppity jillion dollars. Because from what I understood, KSW offered him like a ridiculous contract, something the UFC had no chance of matching or getting anywhere near. So the fact that he signed with ONE tells me that they are just paying him a ridiculous amount of money. We've seen guys like Paul Hughes sign with PFL because they're willing to spend the money because they can get it from Saudi and just chuck it at these dudes. But then at that point, like these guys are getting that money. And yeah, if Brendan Loughnane was on the Contender Series and didn't get a contract and didn't seem like and he looked damn good in his fight. Austin Vanderford never got a contract. And there's like a whole bunch of like other, like I thought Anthony Romero and his fight probably should have gotten one. I unfortunately think that kind of like stymied his career in a lot of ways because he was one of the best prospects in the sport. And unfortunately, it's just kind of tough right now. So yeah, I'm trying to remember like the outright free agent signees that they've had. There's like a couple like to fill the women's bantamweight division. Yeah. Manel Kopp was like a legit bring him over and sign him. But that's just where we're at right now. Like free agents like go to the UFC. But it's a good time to be a fighter because like I know with the whole Bellator thing being sort of absorbed by PFL, a lot of people are saying, well, this kind of sucks. It gives fighters less opportunity. And there is some truth to that. But now PFL, because of how Don Davis is and because of how he's sort of handling everything, he's just saying he's using this as an opportunity to pay these fighters more money to come to their organization for very little exposure. And then for the exposure they get, once they get to the end of their deals, if they become stars, once they become free agents again, the UFC could just lop them up if they want. Like, look at Kayla Harrison. If Paul Hughes becomes a star, they're just going to lop him right up. They're going to take him. You think Dakota Dacheva is going to be staying at PFL for like more than the next 2 years? She's going to be in the UFC. And PFL is going to set her up perfectly. They're just going to keep giving her these fights. She's going to get over like a star. And then when she is no longer up for re-upping or anything like that, the UFC is just going to take her if they want her. Like PFL is actually going to become a breeding ground for the UFC in a lot of respects. Like they can brag about getting all the free agents. Yeah. Like they can brag about getting all the free agents, but as soon as they peak, they're not going to want to stay there. They're going to want to go to the UFC. So yeah, it's a new strategy now.
Kids, this is what monopoly looks like. It just is like it's a very clear monopoly. And you could be okay with monopolies. Like that is an opinion you are allowed to have. It's pretty clearly like, this is how monopolies work. Their market dominance is substantially more than is normally allowed in this country.
Yeah.
And so they can kill their own middle class and, hey, you're old. We don't really want to pay you anymore. Go, yeah, feel free. Go get more money from PFL or Bellator. We'll replace you with 10-10 talent because it doesn't matter. Everywhere we go, we break records. Everywhere we go.
You don't even need to kill PFL. Yeah, PFL is like your partner now. Just like let him breathe. Say nice things about him. Like, be honest, but if they, don't completely dump on them, because they are going to be so valuable to you, because they're going to rise through the ranks and they're going to become quasi stars and get way more money than you would have paid them. And then when they're at their peak of their powers, you could just take them and then they're on your roster and it's great. And you get them at the very end.
Never going to compete with you.
Never.
Because the UFC isn't a monopoly.
Yep. BKFC is the co-leader.
I guess it's maybe monopsony. It's either way. It's the same thing.
Well, there you have it, everybody. Like I said earlier, there is a Jake Paul, Mike Perry press conference coming up at the top of the hour. You can watch it on MMAfighting.com. It's a terrific website. It's starting at 2 p.m. Eastern. I assume the robot will be there. All the main card fighters are going to be there. Jake Paul,
Mike Perry fight the robot.
That would be incredible. Amanda Serrano will be there. Uriah Hall will be there. Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. will be there. H2O Silva will be there. All of the main card fighters will be there.
I can't read your name commenter because I do not have that in me, but PFL is worth $1 billion is a terrific comment.
Yes, it is.
Company valuations are really fun.
It stinks they're so bad, numbers. Man. God, it sucks that they're so bad. We need them to be good, but more good times to be had tomorrow. Heck of a morning. We'll have a Paul Perry UFC preview show coming up tomorrow, and then on to the weekend. Lots of fun. For Jed, I am Mike Heck. Normal show next week. Good night, everybody. You're the best.
Love y'all. Maybe we'll do a cannonball for the preview show tomorrow, Mike.
Ooh.
I'm not feeling it
you have
right
to watch
now.
the preview show. Fair enough.
That's right. Tune into the preview show. That's how you sell.
Cannonball.
Love y'all.